Lynn, I recognize that
Oh,
character.
I know who that is. Hi,
Look at
Joe.
that shady
How you
guy.
doing, guys?
How are
Hey, Joe,
you?
how are you doing?
Good. I want to hear Sabrina talk.
I
I
know,
really,
right?
I love it. Thanks for coming.
oh yeah, wouldn't miss this.
Thanks. Slowly, I think other people are coming in here.
Yeah.
Hi,
Did
Curtis.
everybody vote today?
Yeah, I did early.
Yes,
Yes,
Me too. I
did.
voted last week.
it's a
Nice.
good thing.
Yeah.
Long line. My God, never seen such a long line.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, at least people are getting out there, right?
Yeah. It's all good.
Hi, Kyle.
I'm actually Kevin. Kyle's coming in too.
Okay, well, hi, Kevin. How are you today?
Doing good. How about yourselves?
Doing good. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having us.
Of course. I recognize Brooke, probably at the counter just listening in.
Brooke said that she doesn't have a webcam.
I don't think she wants to be on the webcam, maybe.
Yeah, she's too shy.
That's funny. Awesome. We ready to get started, Darren? You
Yeah,
think we're
let's do
good?
it.
Everybody all in here? We're ready to go?
Yeah,
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining Darren and I today. We're going to be discussing converting calls and advisor performance. So I just put on a little quick slide for you guys that I want to go through. It should only take about 30-40 minutes. I know how busy everybody is. So I just wanted to take a little time and just connect with you guys about a common reoccurring conversation I've been having with service advisors and owners, which is about how to convert these calls into appointments and then the overall performance of advisors. So just a couple things we'll go over and chat about. And if you guys have any questions along the way, please let us know. We'd be happy to answer those. Okay. Well, firstly, I want to take a moment to introduce myself a little bit. Some of you guys I know, some of you guys I don't. So my name is Sabrina Wilkerson. I am the business performance analyst and certified trainer here with Elite. I actually help run and the main instructor for our master's program, which is our training program for service advisors. So I'm mostly dealing with the service advisors on a day-to-day basis. So a little bit more about me. I have a lot of experience in the customer service world, and then I also was a service advisor myself. So a lot of what I train them comes from personal experience and then also incorporating everything in the master's program as part of that. I live in Kingsland, Georgia with my two little girls, and I just put a couple little fun pictures on the screen. These are some of Darren and I's past master's classes, and I just love these. But Darren, do you want to share just a quick little intro about yourself?
sure. I'm Darren Barney. I'm the owner of Elite, and I own a shop in Grand Junction, Colorado called Barney Brothers Off Road, and we do off-road lift kit vehicle repairs and things like that. And then I also own Elite. And Sabrina asked me if I wanted to come on to her little pop-up today, and I said, sure, I'd love to come. So I'm grateful to be able to be here with you guys today. So thanks, Sabrina.
Yeah, thank you for joining. It wasn't too much of a struggle to pull you over, but I love just being able to present this information with you, Darren. So thanks for coming.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, let's dive into it a little bit here, guys. Okay. So first and foremost, I want to start by talking about converting calls, right? So when we get that initial appointment or get that initial phone ringing, what do we need to be doing to convert those over to appointments? So once again, this is a common question or a common concern that came up to me in my conversations with advisors and owners is, how do we get those calls over to appointments? Takes a lot to get the phone to ring, as I'm sure a lot of you guys know if you're owners here joining us today. And so we need to have universal truths, if you will, for converting those over to appointments. So first and foremost, I want to start with positive mindset. So I've been talking to my advisors a lot about mindset and how important it is to go into each day, each hour, each minute, if you will, with a positive mindset. If you're going to be one of those people who maybe let those challenging callers influence how you present to the next client or how you are when you answer that next call, that's really going to make a big difference in converting that appointment or converting to that appointment, excuse me, because you only get one chance to make a first impression. So it's really just important that you pay attention to how you are when you answer that phone and just be nice, right? Just be nice to people, right? Like go in and have a great tonality and just think, okay, wow, I've got this. Whatever happened earlier, I'm going to let that go. I'm going to go in and just be grateful that they gave me a call, and I'm going to do whatever I can do to help them. Darren, do you want to share a little bit more about mindset? I know you're big on this too.
Well, no, it's just important that no matter how slow it's been, we got to remind our advisors that we got to still have that good attitude. Because when you answer that call, the customer doesn't have any idea what's going on in your world, and
Yeah.
it's important that we just remind them to have a good positive outlook on the day.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've heard from advisors too that, because it is slower right now, that's something that they've kind of mentioned. They're getting into this mindset of like they're not going to book the appointment or they're going to say no. Well, it's like if you carry on that mindset, that's going to happen, right? It's kind of like that law of attraction. If that's how you think or that's what you assume is going to happen, then it's more likely to happen. And you're also more likely to miss steps in your sales cycle or miss the process because you're pre-assuming that they're not going to come in. So once again, going back to just being positive when you answer that phone, I like to think I am going to schedule this appointment, right? Kind of some positive reassurance or affirmations, if you will, to myself before I pick up the phone.
That's right.
Agree.
So another thing to keep in mind, guys, is that when the caller is calling into the shop, they want a solution, right? They want finality to whatever their problem is. They're calling the shop hoping to get your advice, to get your expert guidance on whatever it's going to take to resolve their concerns. So just remember that they want to feel like their issue is being heard and understood, and then they're relying on you as that expert to offer a clear path forward to help them resolve it. So make sure you're listening in to what their concerns are so that you can provide that solution, that finality. Another thing I want to talk about is that price is all they know to ask, and it starts a conversation. This one is very important to me. I was actually talking to a manager a few weeks ago, and he was kind of touching on the term that we often use, which is price shopper, right? Have we all heard of that? We all probably use that term, right? Price shopper when they're calling around. And we were talking a little bit about how it's not really that they're a price shopper, right, guys? It's just that price is really all they know to ask, and it starts that conversation. They don't know to ask about our warranty or about our ASCE certified technicians, right? Or what that means or how they benefit from that. They don't know to ask about the quality of our parts or the history of the shop, right? I could go on and on and on. They don't know to ask those things as consumers. They just know how to tell you, here's what they think is going on. Can you give them a price on that? So it is your job as the advisor, or it is your advisor's job if you're an owner, to kind of help them understand that they're not just a price shopper, but that's just all they know to ask. And it's up to us as advisors to take control of that conversation and then to ask good questions to help them find the solution to their problem, right? Darren, do you want to touch on that a little bit as well?
Well, I think it's important that we need to remember to, once again, ask those questions to make sure that we understand and then be able to really get to them to know that price is not the most important thing. They need to know that the car is going to be fixed the first time, and they need to make sure that they're having a good quality tech there. All those things are so important. We need to make sure that we educate the customer. There's nothing like that good feeling of calling to a customer that you've dealt with, and then they tell you that they're going to continue to call around, and they call back and they're like, I just felt the best with you guys. And I love to hear that comment, because I know that we gave them that value and that they now learned that they need to know more than just price.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. That's a great point. That little picture there on the screen, build trust. That's what we're looking to do, right? We're looking to build relationships with our clients, have more client retention, and all of these things together are going to help us build that trust. Absolutely.
Sabrina, something else I think we need to talk about here when we go back to that positive mindset
Yeah.
is that, we've got to remember that these people, when they're calling us, they're apprehensive and they're freaked out. They don't want to be calling us. They're really upset that they're calling because their car is broken. That thing that gets them to work and back, or to helps them pick up their kids or takes them out hunting or whatever it is, that car is broken. So they're in a high anxiety state, and that anxiety is really high. So we've got to remember that we have to do everything we can to make them feel comfortable and make them feel like they've got a friend there, and like like Sabrina said so well earlier, that positive mindset with that advisor is so important because they're freaking out. We have no idea what's going on in their world, right? And they're calling us. And if we're grouchy with them, that starts that whole interaction with them so much harder to make a sale. It's so much harder to connect with them if they're on the defense. So we got to
Yeah.
remember to be nice in the very beginning. It's just so important. Sorry, Sabrina, I just had to go back to it. So
No, I think that's a great point. And honestly, as a previous advisor myself, Darren, that was something that I often forgot or didn't think about simply, right? When I talk to the clients, they sound calm and collected from what I can tell, but in reality, they're not. Something's going on with their vehicle that they don't know what it is. Maybe it's hindering them from getting to work or picking up their kids, right? And so their anxiety is high. And I need to do what I can to build that trust and to bring that anxiety down.
well, I mean, we take it for granted because we own shops or we know people that own shops or where we work at a shop, whatever it is. And so we take it for granted. But to the rest of the world, it's a pretty big deal when your car doesn't work anymore. It's just like when your furnace dies at your house or you have a plumbing issue and it's something you can't fix. There's that
Mhm.
unknown fear that comes in where you're like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen here? How much is this going to cost? So
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So I think kind of a key takeaway to that too is help your advisors recognize when the anxiety is high in the clients and then help them come up with strategies to lower that anxiety in their clients too.
take care of them.
Yep, take care of them. Exactly. Darren, I think you mentioned benefits a few moments ago, right? But one of the things they have on here is know the benefits of your service by heart. We have this saying that we use in the master's program. It's right there on your screen. It's WIFM, which is what's in it for me. Okay. So as an advisor and even as owners, right, we all need to know what are the benefits to our services. How do our clients win by coming in and getting this service done? Or specifically here, how do they win by coming in and letting us inspect their vehicle rather than just giving them a price for whatever they're calling about, right? So our advisors, they need to know what those benefits are. How do they win? So for me, big ones that come to mind are save the client time and money, right? Provide them peace of mind that their vehicle will be fixed right the first time. But believe it or not, so often I hear these things missed when I'm calling into a shop and I'm doing kind of like a secret shopper call, if you will. I don't really hear advisors selling me on how I win by coming in to get the vehicle inspected rather than them just giving me pricing. I don't know about you guys, but as an advisor, I got a lot of those phone calls of I took it to a parts store and they told me this and here's what they said that I need. Can you give me a price on that? Right? We need to tell them, hey, let's actually get it in. Let's make sure that's what that is first and use our benefits and our analogies to help paint that mental image for them on how they win by getting these services done. So maybe go back to your advisors and say, hey, do you know how they win by coming in first? And see what they tell you. You might be surprised. Darren, do you have anything you want to add there?
No, do we need to talk about what WIIFM means?
Yeah, I think I
The
said it,
radio
but if
station.
not, I missed it. I'm so sorry, guys. It's what's in it for me. And actually, every single one of us have that on our forehead with them. What's in it for me?
Yep.
As consumers, we want to know how we win from getting the service done. Right?
Cool.
Great point out, Darren. Thank you for that.
Yep. All right.
So control the conversation. Okay. This one is very, very vital. I often do like phone audits within the master's program where I ask the owners to send me these calls and I'll listen to them with the advisors. And believe it or not, I hear a lot where it's the client controlling the conversation. The client is the one that's asking the questions on, the process and what it means to do it, to get that inspection done first or things that it could be, right? And I'm often blown away because I'm like, guys, we're the credible experts here, right? We've got to take control of that conversation. We have to be good detectives. We have to ask really good questions so that we can then find that solution for the client, which is usually bringing it in for that appointment, right? Let's get it in. Let's figure out exactly what's going on. But the advisors need to know that they have to control that. They have to be the one to ask those really good questions, which also is going to help not only the customer and help the advisor, but help the technician too when they do come in. So also, when we are controlling that conversation, when we are asking those good fact-finding questions, that allows the advisor to then go and say, hey, Mr. Customer, from what you've told me right now, I just have more questions than I have answers, what I think we need to do, and then go into the benefits and selling them on the inspection. So just remind your advisors that the person who is in charge of the conversation, the one that's in control, is the one asking the questions. So they should have a pretty good list of some questions that they should ask their customers based off what the client's calling in for. I think that's pretty important. Darren, you want to add anything?
Just to remember, I mean, not to get too much into physiology here of the brain, but we're all wired, we're binary. And what that means is that the mind is designed to answer questions. And so as an advisor gets on the phone and starts asking the customer more questions, they're the ones that are going to be controlling that conversation. Because if we don't control the conversation, where's the first place it goes? To price, right? So if we can control that conversation and then make sure that we're asking them the right questions to get a good response. And some of those questions can be, hey, tell me a little bit more about that noise. When do you notice it? Asking them more questions so they realize that they don't know, they don't have all the answers, instead of just, well, I need a price for brakes. So it's like, well, okay, so no problem at all. Let me get some more information from you first here. So you say you need brakes. How do you know it needs brakes? And then they go through and you just continue to ask those questions, get to know them better, make sure that you're identifying those needs so that you can then, once again, identify a good solution for them. But it's important we ask lots of questions and control that conversation.
Yeah. Lots of good points there, Darren. And I think another thing that advisors miss is that by asking those questions, like how long has this been going on? When did it start? When does it happen? All of that helps build into that trust, right? They're going to see that you're a credible expert. It also shows the client, oh, wow, this may be a little bit more complicated than I thought it was, right? I thought it was just a simple brakes, but what does that mean these days? What does a simple brake job even really mean, right? Is it pads? Is it pads and rotors? Is it calipers, hoses? Is there just a rock stuck in the caliper, right? There's so many different things there that they often don't know. So when we ask good questions, that's educating them too, in a way, to let them know it may not be as simple as they thought it was. So great points. Another one here is ask for the sale. That is super important, right, Darren?
Yes, very important.
Got to ask for it. It's as simple as that. Again, I'm going back to the calls that I've kind of been listening to and questions and things that have come up in my conversations. But when I've listened to some of those calls, the amount of times that I've heard the customer say, well, when can I come in? What? Well, why did we never ask for it a little bit early on in the conversation, right? So this brings up a couple things for me, at least, which is one, your advisors have to know what the schedule is, right? They have to know when are the available times in that week that they need to fill. So they should be knowing, here's how many hours I should sell each week. Here's my open time slots for each day, for each advisor, right? So that way, when they do have that customer on the phone and they need to ask for the sale, they can then offer them 2 appointment times. So for an example, right, I can get your vehicle in now, or I can get you in tomorrow at 8 a.m. But they're more equipped to go in and ask for the sale if they know what their schedule's like and if they know where they need to fill those spots at. But we got to ask for it. We shouldn't be waiting for our clients to say, well, when can you get me in?
It's important.
Yeah.
I mean, how often do we hear that, Sabrina? All the time, where they're just like, we hear advisors not asking for the sale. Well, I can get you in now or at 2 o'clock, or I can get you in tomorrow at 4 or at 2. Which one works best for you? Going in for that close is so important. We have advisors all the time where they'll make this comment and then they just kind of leave it out there in the air because they don't want to make it uncomfortable for them or the customer. So you've got to make sure they're asking for that sale.
Yeah. Yep. They often get quiet and they say nothing. Well, it's like, well,
Yep.
the client doesn't really know what to do from there, right? They're kind of relying on you to direct that conversation towards that. I think too, it places a sense of urgency, right? Like if we just leave it up to them, it's almost like, we don't really like, you can come in or you can't, whatever you want to do. But when we ask for the appointment, it kind of is that urgency of, hey, let's get it in here. Like I want to figure out what's going on for you. I want to get your vehicle looked at. So it's important that we ask for that and
Yes,
not
it
just
is.
leave it silent. Yeah, great one. Awesome. Well, I know we just kind of covered a lot really quickly. I just want to see if anybody has any questions before I move on. Anybody have?
Sabrina, I have a
Yeah,
question.
Joe. Yeah.
You mentioned about calls in the beginning, the ratio, can you give us a little insight on tracking those calls, converting those calls, and also your method, how to track it, because obviously you want to see some sort of ratio, right, of conversions. So can you talk to that topic a little bit?
Yeah, Joe, that is a wonderful question. I've actually got some slides coming up here.
Oh, I'm
So
sorry.
here, no,
Okay.
no, I love it, Joe. You're ahead of the game. I love that. We're going to talk about tracking and performance, and then I'm going to actually show you guys a
Okay.
performance report that I use in the master's program. Wonderful.
Okay, good.
Thanks,
So
Joe.
I'll hold that thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If I get to that and you still have a question I didn't answer, please let me know. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Of
Thank
course.
you.
Thanks. All right. Well, I'll keep going here. So let's talk about tracking, right? We've got to definitely have a way to track. So really quickly, guys, I want to talk about the power of tracking. And if you're not tracking, we definitely should be. But also, we should be letting our advisors know of this process. So I mentioned earlier on, I used to be a service advisor. And one thing I'll tell you guys is that I knew nothing about the breakdown of my numbers and where I should be at. I didn't know what my closing ratio was. I didn't know what my ARO was. I didn't know about the conversion ratio of appointments, okay? I didn't understand the importance of even knowing those numbers until I went through the program and learned a little bit more and sat down with my owner, and I saw how vital it was that I knew more than just my total sales and more than just the commission I was going to make, because I wanted to help the shop overall, okay? So before I go any further, I want to talk about the power of tracking with you guys. So make sure that you set clear expectations, okay? I think a lot of owners have like a 5-year plan on where you want to be in 5 years. Tell your team members what that looks like for you, right? What is expected and needed of them to help you make that 5-year plan? If you're on track for meeting that plan, and then if not, what are their goals and what should they be like to help you with that, right? Kind of sit down, define those goals clearly, and ensure everybody knows what those goals are. I think that's really important. Identify areas of improvement. So once you've set those clear expectations, once you know what those would be like, you will be able to identify those areas of improvement. And I'm going to get into this a little bit more here in just a moment, but this allows you to really hone in and pay attention to areas such as the conversion ratio of appointments, Joe, right? So ask yourself, like, what is their closing ratio? What is their conversion ratio? And then from here, you kind of know where your missed opportunities are to kind of fix those gaps. Maybe they need additional training in certain areas, and this lets you figure those things out. The power of tracking also improves efficiency, right? You will be able to tell from this, where is your advisor spending most of their time at? Maybe they're not spending their time in the correct areas. Maybe they're not spending enough time on the phone with their clients, following a good sales cycle or a good process or procedure. And so they're missing some steps along the way, such as benefits, right? Remember WIFM on our forehead. And maybe they need to go back and kind of learn the value of that themselves as advisors, and how spending a little bit more time in those areas is ultimately going to help them in the long run. Okay. It drives accountability. This is a big one. We've got to be accountable for our specific goals and where we're at. So if you implement a good tracking system, it'll, and making sure they're following through with that tracking system, right? It'll drive accountability to making sure, once again, that they're helping you reach your 5-year plan as an owner, and most importantly, help their clients, right? They're going to know, I'm missing the ball somewhere along the way in my call and my presentation. I need to go back and refine that and work on honing in on that so I can then help my clients. So for me too, as I mentioned earlier, when I knew what those numbers should be and I had a way to track those, it further made me want to strive to even go beyond those, right? But it drove accountability to making sure I was looking at those on a weekly and even daily basis. So Darren, do you want to talk about anything? Sorry, I didn't chime in with you.
No, we're
I got really
good.
excited
I'll
there.
go on the next page. I get excited about the next stuff. So
Of course. And then I just have a little quote here I like to share. When performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is measured and reported, the rate of improvement accelerates. I love that quote. So, all right. Well, let's talk about kind of Joe's question a little bit there, right? What are some things we should be tracking? What are some KPIs we should be looking at? How should we, have accountability for those? So, Darren, do you want to start us off?
of course. So if you're not tracking your advisor's performance numbers, you're really missing out. We've seen it time and time again. I do even use it in my own shop, even not talking about the master's program, which is what this is from. In my shop, every one of my people, even my technicians, everybody fills out their own performance report. And I feel it's really important because it helps me as an owner to be able to know what my team's doing and how they're doing and be able to work with them and coach them. And especially since I'm not in the everyday operation of the business, I love to be able to go and click on a performance report and I can look and see that, you know, an advisor sold 60 hours yesterday. And then to be able to call them on the phone and just be like, hey man, what did you do? You sold 60 hours. That's awesome. Great job. Or they're in a little bit of a slump and me to be able to call the manager and talk to the manager to work them through, you know, how to make, you know, improve their performance. So if you're not tracking numbers, I would really recommend that you do it. Just because there's so much magic, you know, I mean, like Sabrina just said in that quote that what we track improves, and it's the truth. When your advisors know every day what's expected of them, they really rise to the occasion. In fact, there was a Gallup poll a couple of years ago. I don't remember. I think it was in 2016 or 2015, and they interviewed all these employees, and they found out that most of the highest performers, the best paid people, all liked to know what was expected of them, and they knew what was expected every day for their performance. And so, you know, you look at that and you look at all these people that were highly successful in their jobs and they all knew exactly what was expected of them. It doesn't change for our advisors. Our good advisors, your good technicians, especially the ones that are on flat rate, they know exactly what they do every day. And I mean, I've got a tech right now that's just incredible. He's been with me for years, and it's one of those things that he knows exactly where he's at when he goes to lunch. He knows where he's at every moment of the day because he's really focused on, you know, his pay and what it's going to take to benefit. So as we go through these numbers, really think about tracking in your business. It makes a huge difference for your people and for you and for the numbers too. So sorry, Sabrina, didn't mean to get wound up
No.
there, but it's so important, you know?
It is. It is. And again, I love that you mentioned so much of that because as I said earlier, I didn't know where I was at. And I felt like once I was given those clear expectations and I
I'm on
knew
mute,
what
but
the
there's
goals were,
no
it
anything.
really
So
helped me to focus in on improving those areas and knowing where I stood and also identifying my own strengths and my own weaknesses, right? Which is important. We got to do some self-evaluation as advisors to kind of know what we need to work on. So really quickly, I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly, and then I'm going to specifically talk about conversion ratio, kind of like you talked about, Joe, because talking about converting appointments too, right? This is a weekly tracking system. I would even encourage a daily tracking system personally. If you don't already have one in your shop, I would utilize a daily. But even just having a weekly one is a good place to start, right? So, you know, we track several different things here. Effective labor rate, you know, we need to know, are advisors discounting when they're getting objections? Are they discounting things? And if so, we need to work on getting kind of ahead of that, right? We're looking at our ARO and our closing ratio. These are ones
Hey,
that
Sabrina,
yeah.
let's go back to that effective labor rate and let's
Oh,
just talk about
certainly.
that really quick because
Of course.
so guys, reason why this is so important to know what your effective labor rate is versus what your door labor rate is so that you can really look at it and know, is somebody discounting or is your advisor going in and knocking down the labor rate so that they feel better, so they're playing with their emotional bank account or whatever the reason is. We see it often when advisors first start going through the master's program and we start paying attention, and it's like they're let's just say that the posted labor rate on the door, you know, like your average labor rate's 150 bucks an hour. Which, you know, that could be low in some parts of the US and it could be high in others, but let's just say it's 150, but yet you're only collecting 120. So what that means is that there's $30 an hour that is being left somewhere. It's being either discounted out or it's being, you know, the advisors playing with the labor rate, whatever it may be, but you're losing $30 an hour. And you'd be surprised how often it is that we see this in shops across the nation where the collected labor rate is lower than what their actual, you know, door rate is. So it's important to know that because once again, you can find out if your employees are discounting, which it's especially when the economy tightens up and it's harder to make that sale. What's one of the first things that the advisor will do is they go in and they discount rather than building interest and value and helping that customer understand why you're charging that they are. They just go in and they discount. So that goes, I mean, that once again, you look at 30 bucks an hour. I mean, I was working with a shop once that was losing $60 an hour. And so you think of that, I mean, that is crazy. And it was it was two advisors that were discounting and they were doing other things to make the prices low. And it was a big deal. But once we fixed that, it was amazing how profitability came right back to the shop. So I'm sorry, Sabrina, I didn't mean to sidetrack there, but effective labor rate's really huge. You really should look at yours and see where it's at.
Yeah, no, those are great points. And I think that also kind of drives in why it's so important to be tracking numbers, right, Darren?
Yes.
Because if
Oh,
you're
yes.
tracking these numbers, then you know where your areas are of growth. You know what you need to do. You need to check in with your advisor to see, are they thinking with their own wallet, right? Are they discounting? And if so, work through ways to help them through that. Oftentimes that means that they don't see the benefit themselves, right? They're not sold into
Yep.
something themselves, and they really have to buy in order to not want to discount. They need to provide value versus providing a discount, right? But then you can have that conversation. So
Yep.
it's great points. I love it. Same with ARO and closing ratio, right? If those things are a little bit lower, then they may be cherry picking what they present to their clients, or they may be thinking with their own wallet, so therefore they are cherry picking. Maybe they're not handling objections the way that they need to. Maybe they don't have a process. Maybe they're not comfortable taking it beyond that no. But looking and doing a deeper dive, once you are tracking these numbers, you can then focus in on those areas of improvement by having that information. So it's important that you as the owner, excuse me, know what those are, but also that your advisor does too, that they know what these are, what they mean, right? More than just looking at, here on the screen, we got 51% closing ratio. What does that mean to me as the advisor, right? Why do I need to know that? They've got to have that information too. So if you already have a tracking system, awesome. I love that. Kind of loop your advisor into what that looks like too, so they can become more aware of it. And then we were talking about converting calls. So you guys will notice here on the screen that it shows number of incoming calls, the appointments that were actually scheduled, and then that tells us how many of those were lost leads, and that gives us our closing ratio, okay? So a lot of our software systems don't tell us if it's an actual lead or not, right? It'll tell us how many calls we got each day, but how do we know if they actually called in for something that we do at the shop, right? Maybe they called in for a diesel and you don't work on diesels, or maybe they called in for a pizza and you're not the pizza shop, right? So what I encourage is advisors need to have a way of being accountable for tracking this themselves. I like to keep a little post-it note nearby my phone, and I would just do a little tally really quickly if it was a call that was something I could actually work on and that could become a titular appointment. I actually like to have two sticky notes side by side, one for the tallies of the appointments or the calls, excuse me, and then another one for the tally for the ones that I actually converted to appointments. And then I put those numbers into my performance report. So super easy, but advisors have to know that they need to be accountable for tracking that information. And therefore, they need to have a way of giving that information to you as the owner, because then they know, okay, I'm being held accountable here. I need to actually be tallying these up and be kind of knowing where I'm at. And then again, you will get the conversion ratio from that. And that's going to tell you, okay, if my conversion ratio is a little bit lower than what it should be, I need to go back and visit my phone skills procedure. I need to maybe go do a call audit with you. Let's listen to this call together. Let's see kind of what my strengths were and my growth opportunities. Maybe I didn't ask good fact-finding questions. Maybe I didn't sell them on the benefits, right? But by having this conversion ratio and then knowing, let's go listen to a call or let's do a role play together, whatever that looks like, you'll find those areas that you need to improve upon so that you can increase their closing ratio. Because once again, every phone call matters. We need to make the most of it. Kind of what you see here too on the screen is when you see those lost leads, you can also see the value of those lost leads once you have your ARO. And then for me as an advisor, I'm like, oh my goodness, look at all that the shop lost out on, that I lost out on, right? And all those clients that I didn't help the way that I should have helped them. So just
Well,
really
I
great.
think it's important too, because we always hear, just very often we hear, oh, I've got a marketing problem. And then we actually go in and we look, and it's like, we find out where their call log is actually at. And we find out that, let's just say that they have 100 calls, or let's just do 10. Let's just say they have 10 calls coming in every day, and their advisor is only closing 2 of those calls. It's not a marketing problem. The phone's ringing. And we see it all the time, where it's like, you got to make sure that when your phone is being answered, it's being answered by the right people and they're answering it the right way. Once again, if it rings 10 times and your advisor only gets 2 people in, that's horrible closing ratio. I mean, you're losing 8 other customers that were, could have been in spending money in your shop. So it's important that you really pay attention to how many calls you have coming in every day. Really track it. And I've had people, challenge me on this. It's like, well, what about Google calls? And do I record those too? And it's like, I just tell everybody to be consistent in how you track your numbers. If you're going to track all calls that come in, a lot of us have the voice over IP phones. And if you're going to do that and you just get it from the call log and you just write down whatever that number is, just make sure it's consistent. Do it every day the same way, and then you're going to have consistent numbers. If you want to do it just off of qualified phone calls, you can do that too. Whatever works best for you and your company, but be tracking your numbers, because then you can have good conversations with your employees. And it's like, well, man, it feels like it's been so slow lately. Things are terrible. It's been so slow. And you go and you look at the call log and you're like, well, actually, I looked at it and compared to the last 3 weeks, it's the same. We have the same amount of calls coming in now. So it's a morale issue at that point. It's an emotional issue, and we got to go in and fix that. But if you look at it, the numbers are lower. It's like, okay, we can go in and have a different conversation with our advisors. But without tracking, we have no idea. We really don't know where we're at. So it's important to really pay attention to how many calls are coming in and how many of those are being converted to clients.
Yeah, great points. I think it circles back around to the mindset thing too, Darren, right? They're like, oh, we're just slow right now. We're just slow right now. Well, you're using that as an excuse, because what I'm seeing here, you're not slow. Actually, you've had many opportunities, right? You just
that.
focus on those.
Yeah. Can I make a point here too, Sabrina?
Of course, Joe.
When I coach clients too, many clients say, well, look, like to Darren's point, my marketing's off. I need more cars. Let's bump up our paid ads. And and I say, well, slow down a second. Look at the data. Look at the data. The same amount. It's not a car count problem. We have a sales problem, or maybe something going on with the customers or service advisors, or both. Let's try to capitalize on this first before we go spending any money, which is probably. And also, I bring it to the point. Look at your average car counts. Yeah, they may have slipped 1 to 2 cars a week, but not 10 to 20 cars. So the problem is in the data right here. So this is a very, very important point that I kind of struggle with clients too. So if you can send it home to the service advisors and make them more aware of this, I think it'll help the shop owner too realize that this is where it's all at. It's not in getting more cars in, is how can we capitalize on those calls, converting the calls to appointments, and then once they're in, what's going on in that process too. So very, very, very important points here, Sabrina.
Yeah. And you make up good points too, right? Because when I look at these with my advisors, just for example, I do hear that, right? Like car counts lower, not getting enough calls. Well, based off what I'm seeing here, it's not true. And the discovered services, they're still there. You guys are still finding things. It's that closing ratio that's telling me that you're probably not following a step, right? But when you have the data, like you're saying, to kind of show that, it makes it a little easier and kind of helps the client or the advisor understand too, of like, okay, you're right. I'm doing something here that I need help with, right? I need help with this area. So definitely important to track. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Great points. Does anybody else have any questions?
Scott does. He's always got a question. What's up, Scott?
He's like, don't put me on the spot here. I am muted for a reason.
Scott, come on. You always have a lot to say, and it's always right on point, Scott. Come on.
Sorry, you're outvoted here, Scott.
I had to remember how to unmute myself there. So I think that it's important that when you're tracking these things, when you go to your advisors and with these numbers, it's very important that you point out to them that you're tracking them, so that if there's an area that they need help in, that you're tracking this so that you can help them, not to point fingers at them,
100%.
but to find the problem so that you can help them address it.
Yeah, that's a great.
That's when you start tracking things, everybody feels like there's a target put on their back, so they're not going to want to help track this if you're just trying to point out their problems.
Right. You're trying to help them, That's right, Scott, 100%. We got to go in with the right attitude.
Yeah, 100%.
That's a great point. It goes back to those setting clear expectations, right? Of like, this isn't me coming down on you for something. I just want to know where I can help you at and areas that you can improve. And also these are your individual numbers, right? We're not looking at other people's, we're looking at yours and what we can do to help you specifically. Great point. Love it. Awesome. Good. Well, any other questions that have come up that you guys, or anything you guys want to chat about really quickly? Kind of leave it open to you guys.
One more, Sabrina, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
When a service advisor comes to your class, though, and they've never seen that dashboard. They've never seen these data points. What's the learning curve? Like how, obviously it's 3 days, but it's that 6 month period afterwards that really reinforces it. But how long does it take a typical service advisor to change the way they do things and to implement your process?
So the actual process itself, or tracking their progress.
That whole dashboard that they have to fill in those numbers, that I got to see,
Yeah.
that could be a struggle for some, right?
Yes, yeah, great question. So we do an orientation pretty early on so that the owners know, like, hey, these are what we're going to be tracking. We need you guys to work together with the advisor to know where they can locate those numbers, because that's the other big part, Joe. A lot of them have no idea where this is even at in their
Yeah,
system to look
yeah,
at, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so they've got to know, how do I even find this information to be turning it in on a weekly basis? So we
yeah.
let the owners know, but even with that, I actually just, like, a couple weeks ago, I had a conversation with an advisor who kind of was turning it in, but they didn't really know what they were looking at. And so I broke it down a little bit more for them. So I would say it is a learning curve. For some advisors, it does take a little bit longer to understand what this data means and how they benefit from knowing it. It usually takes a couple weeks and then they start getting it down, right? Because now they're more
Yeah.
accountable. They figured out where it's at. They know how to look at it, right? So I guess long-winded comment, but to answer your question, it does usually take a few weeks
Yeah, I
of
can imagine
questions
that.
from them.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
good.
Especially
Thank
if their
you.
shops aren't already tracking, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
And you can
But
always
once
tell the
they
ones
do,
that are used to tracking because they do it a
yeah,
lot quicker and it's a lot more
yes,
consistent,
they do.
you
Yeah,
know.
you can.
But we think it's really important to do daily. Now that report that Sabrina just showed you guys is a weekly report, and that's fine. But I think most power comes from advisors that track every day, because I had no idea that, I should have known this by the end of the day numbers, but Fridays and Mondays years ago were our two biggest days,
Yep.
because the fact that the team would push so hard on a Friday, and then Monday everybody go out and break their parts, and because mine's an off-road business, so people go out and go wheeling and stuff over the weekend, and then they come in on Monday. So we started paying attention to that, and I started encouraging the team. It's like, well, wait a minute here. What can happen? Can we start pushing to get some of these jobs done earlier in the week rather than waiting until Friday and everything snowballs? And it was a big move for us as a business. And we realized that we need to start doing that every day. We need to work on closing at the end of the day. And that's when I started doing the daily tracking, and it made a big difference for my business, because it was just, we knew exactly what was going on every day rather than at the end of the week. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's a great point. And then as an advisor, if I know where I'm at the end of Monday, right? If I know, oh, I was off by my daily goal of like $100, then I'm gonna roll that into my Tuesday, right? I'm gonna be more aware of where I need to be at the end of each day. So once again, come Friday, I'm not scrambling to try to meet that goal, right? Or trying to get things closed out and things done to meet the goal. I know where I'm at and where I'm headed. So much benefit to that for sure. Yeah, great questions. Awesome, guys. Well, you guys will all receive an email that will have some really great resources. It's going to be a phone skills resource and then an advisor workflow checklist. Definitely encourage you guys to print those out and share them with your team. You'll also get the recording from today, so if you want to share that with your team. You're also going to have a link to my calendar if you want to schedule an appointment. If you have any questions or things that you want help on and you're like, hey, I don't know what to do in this area, or, is there something I should be doing to help my advisor here? Please reach out to me. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. I've also included this little QR code on the screen to make it easier if you want to pull out your phone and just scan that too to make an appointment with me. I'd be happy to chat with you guys and see what I can do to help. So feel free to reach out. Other than that, guys, I appreciate you guys so much for taking the time to be here. I know you guys are all very busy owners. So thank you so much for taking the time to connect with me and for the great questions. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Cool. Thanks, Sabrina.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your day.
Have a great day.
Bye now.
Bye.